Text 083 4100 102. This is The Last Word with Matt Cooper.
Almost everybody was appalled, repulsed by the findings of the Commission inquiring into child abuse, the Ryan Commission report which came out last week. Some extraordinarily harrowing stories of physical, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, neglect of children. It has been an appalling week listening to the stories of how children were tortured in this country. Not everybody, though, seems to think that way. We're joined by Dr. Bill Donohue from the Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights. Hello to you, Bill.
Thank you for having me on.
Bill, you've put out a press release that says there has been hysteria over Irish clergy abuse. In what way hysteria?
Well, there is a lot of hysteria about it. For example, when Reuters, the British news service, puts out a report saying Irish priest beat, raped children, and then you find out that that's a lie, that most all of the people were not priests, and that almost everybody who was abused wasn't raped, and that you find out that such things as being kissed and, inadequate heating and lack of attachment, inappropriate sexual talk, if that's going to count as abuse, then I regard this as hysteria. In fact, I think it's worse than that, because you show me where in all of Europe, never mind Africa or China, but where in all of Europe, back in when most of this stuff occurred, did they have state-run institutions that were any different from what happened in Ireland?
Well, what would that matter? Surely we're just dealing with what happened in Ireland. We are dealing with. You say that maybe not everything was as has been described, but there were significantly high levels of physical and sexual abuse of children in this country by members of religious orders acting under the auspices of the Catholic Church. Do you not agree with that?
No, I don't, because when you have to break it down by emotional abuse and you count physical abuse as kicking. Look, I got slapped by nuns in Long Island, in New York, all the time for acting up when I was a kid. I don't regard myself as emotionally abused. I think a lot of these people are gold diggers looking to get money from the Catholic Church, and it's only the Catholic Church institutions that are singled out. Nobody ever looks at the state-run institutions, the Protestant institutions, what was taking place at other places during the world at the time, and then you have Reuters jacking up the whole thing by saying Irish priests are raping children. Look, I'm not defending anybody who would abuse a child. What I am saying is this: don't count voyeurism, staring at some guy in the shower, as the same thing as rape, because then you demean the kid who was raped.
I don't think anyone here is demeaning any of the rapes that actually happened, or any underestimating the seriousness of the assaults, the vicious sexual assaults that were carried out. But you can't deny that they happened. They did happen.
Well, anybody who would assault a child should have been imprisoned, and the Catholic Church or anybody else was wrong for allowing this to happen. But when you have the most common kind of sexual assault, never mind the, quote, emotional, which is a very slippery term, being something like fondling. Look, if some brother, Christian brother, grabbed some kid by the behind and gave him a smack or something, don't tell me that I'm going to lose sleep over this. This is the horror of horrors about something that happened in the 1940s when it was common punitive practice all over the world at that time.
Colm O'Gorman is with us as well, formerly of the 1 in 4 organisation, now director of Amnesty International in Ireland. Colm, what do you make of that argument?
Well, I don't know whether I'm nauseated or flabbergasted, frankly, at this point, that somebody who purports to represent a Christian organisation could come out with this kind of stuff. It's extraordinary. I mean, Reuters were accurate in reporting that Irish priests beat and raped children, because that's what the report found. Reuters didn't say
No, it did not. 12%
Reuters, we'll take one at a time. I will give you a chance to come back once Colm is finished.
Reuters did not say priests and priests alone beat and raped children. It's a finding of fact. And I'd remind Bill that this is a report, a judicial inquiry carried out by this state and headed by a High Court judge. So these are findings of fact in law, Mr. Donohue. and they are findings of fact that have been accepted by the Catholic Church here in Ireland. Around some of the comments that you've just made, I mean, first of all, I'd point out that sadly, and to our very great shame, we can point to the UK, where institutions of the time were infinitely better. The industrial school and reformatory regime that was inherited in Ireland at the foundation of the state was carried on here up until the 1980s. By the 1920s and 30s, they were being abolished in the UK because it was recognised that they didn't provide for appropriate care for children. I would also point out that the Commission actually did investigate abuse in institutions run by the Church of Ireland, the Protestant churches here. So you're factually incorrect, and you're hysterical, frankly. Defence of what you see as an attack on the Church really is so completely at odds with either the objective facts, the evidence collected and presented by this inquiry, or indeed the view of the Catholic Church here in Ireland. I'd also just say, as somebody who frankly was raped by a Catholic priest, I cannot begin to tell you how offensive it is to hear you reduce serious sexual assaults like the fondling of infant children, prepubescent and adolescent children, by members of a faith to whom they were handed for care as somehow minimal or not of particular consequence. I can tell you both, as somebody who's had those experiences and as somebody who's a qualified psychotherapist who's worked on many years with people who've experienced those difficulties, that actually for some people a sexual assault of that kind can be as traumatic and have as much impact as an act of rape. I think your views are obscene. I think your views are an extraordinary disservice to the faith that you purport to represent, and I'm at a loss to understand how you can describe yourself as Christian at this point, never mind Catholic.
Dr. Bill Donohue, would the Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights like to withdraw the statement that it's issued?
Oh, not at all, because as you talk about hysteria, look, you want to talk about facts, mister? You take a look what Reuters said. Get back to the facts. Irish priest beat raped children. I will remind you, if you look at the facts, 12% of the abusers, including emotional abuse, which is called lack of attachment, 12% were priests. So when you see a headline that says priest, and you have 88% of the people were priests. You have to shut up now while I shut up when you were talking, all right? What I'm saying is that the headline said, Irish priest beat raped children. Almost all the cases were not rape, and almost all the abusers were not priests.
Mr. Donohue, it's Colm here, and I won't refer to you as Mr. I'll do you the respect of calling you by your name. I'd be really grateful if you could do the same. The reports, I understand, it said that Irish priests beat and raped children. Yeah, the Reuters report. The Ryan report, again, I'll remind you, a statutory inquiry, judicial inquiry carried out by this state, headed by an Irish High Court judge, made a finding in law that Irish priests had beaten and raped children. It also found that the sexual abuse and violation of children in institutions run by the Catholic Church was endemic. It found that the Christian Brothers, for instance, used beatings, physical punishment, contrary to the law of the time. Now, you talked about context in this. Contrary to the law of the time. It used ritualized beatings. It found that the beatings were used almost as a form of communication with the children. It used words like the denigration and humiliation of children. It talked about how weapons were prepared to maximize the level of harm and pain that the physical beatings could inflict. You might have got slapped on the butt by a nun in Long Island, but believe me, the level of ignorance and ineptitude and lack of basic Christian understanding that you've shown in your assessment of this report really leaves me flabbergasted.
I don't think you must have read the report. That's what I concluded. I looked at the report, and I looked at what I found in there, and I found that lack of attachment and affection and inadequate heeding and being kicked are considered, and kissing and inappropriate sexual talk.
Sorry, excuse me. So you don't believe that there's something grossly offensive and obscene about an adult member of a religious order kissing a prepubescent child in a sexual way? You don't have a difficulty with that?
I think it is wrong.
Do you think it's criminal?
In any way, to put their hands on a prepubescent child.
Do you think it's criminal?
That person should have been prosecuted. However, what I'm saying is that when you want to lump things together, when you want to take the corporal punishment and you want to put it in the same category as rape, you've done a disservice to the kid who has been raped, and you're just jacking up the figures so you can have this hysterical...
Mr. Donohue,
hold on a second.
Donohue, as one of the kids who was raped, I can tell you I don't feel that this report does any disservice to me at all, and I can tell you that talking to people who've been in these institutions, they certainly don't feel that the report does them a disservice at all. And I really would suggest, and I have read the report, not only have I read the report, I've been working on the issues around the report for the last 15 years. So, you may have scanned the thing, or you may have read it through some sort of rosy-tinted defensive view of an institution that no longer agrees with your view, by the way. But I can tell you I know what I'm talking about here.